Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is Ralph, and for the longest time, I thought I had the perfect marriage. I met my wife, Susan, when I least expected it, and from the very beginning, I was captivated by her. She had a way of making people feel special, and I wasn't immune to that charm. From the start, I knew she wanted a traditional family life. She always talked about being a stay-at-home mom, raising kids, and creating a home filled with love. I respected and supported it completely. I wanted that too, a family, a home filled with warmth and laughter. And for the first 2 years of our marriage, that's exactly what we had. Those years were filled with so much happiness. When Susan told me she was pregnant, I was overjoyed. I remember just staring at her, trying to process the words. This was the moment I had been waiting for. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly. I had always wanted to be a father, to have a little one running around. And now, it was finally happening. "Are you serious?" I asked. She nodded, laughing softly. The weeks that followed felt like a dream. I started making plans. I wanted to make sure we were fully prepared. In my mind, this was the start of a beautiful new chapter. One filled with love, growth, and the kind of happiness you only see in movies. I had no idea that beneath the surface, a completely different story was unfolding, one that would turn my excitement into heartbreak. But in that moment, I was just a man thrilled to be a father, completely unaware of the truth that was waiting for me down the road. When Susan entered the final stretch of her pregnancy, things got complicated. The doctor recommended that she stay in the hospital for monitoring. I didn't like the idea of her being alone in a hospital room, so I made sure to visit her every chance I got. Before work, after work, even during my lunch breaks, I was there. I wanted her to feel supported, to know that she wasn't going through this alone. She was tired most of the time, but I could tell she appreciated me being there. One thing that started to seem off was the food situation. Susan would text me, asking for a specific meal. Sometimes it was something simple, like a sandwich from her favorite deli, or a particular brand of juice she liked. I'd drop everything and rush to get it, wanting to make her as comfortable as possible. But by the time I got to the hospital, she'd already eaten the exact same thing. When I asked her how, she'd shrug and say, "Oh, a friend got it for me." I assumed it was one of her girlfriends, maybe a nurse she had gotten close to. But every time I pressed for a name, she'd brush it off. "Just someone who was around," she'd say. It didn't make sense. If she had someone bringing her food, why was she still asking me to? It wasn't a big deal at the time, just one of those little things that makes you go, huh. While Susan was waiting to be due any day, I wanted to make sure everything was set up for the baby. I installed security cameras around the house, not just at the baby's room, but in key areas inside as well. Then, Chase was born. I can't even describe the feeling. The second I held him, I felt this rush of emotions. I looked at Susan, exhausted but smiling, and I thought we did it. I signed the birth certificate without hesitation. I was his father, and I was ready to give him the best life possible. At that moment, nothing else mattered. One day while at work, I was done going through my usual routine. I decided to check in on my family. I only wanted to see how your wife and kid are doing. I pulled up the security camera feed on my phone, expecting to see Susan maybe rocking Chase to sleep or lounging on the couch. But instead, I saw a man sitting and talking to Susan, and she was smiling at him, leaning in close. Then, the worst part, he reached down and picked up Chase, bouncing him gently while Susan looked on with warmth in her eyes. I have no idea who this man was. I kept staring at the screen, trying to come up with a reasonable explanation. Maybe he was a relative? A long-lost cousin? A friend from work? I have no idea. Susan had never mentioned anyone like this. And when I checked the earlier clips showing when the man came, Susan had kissed him passionately immediately he stepped in. It's obvious something is going on. Susan doesn't know I installed cameras in both the living room and around the house. The one in the nursery is the only one I ever mentioned when I installed them, for watching over Chase. She must have assumed that was the only one in the house. She had no idea I had placed others in the living room and entryway for extra security. And now, Because of that, I was seeing the things she did while I was at work. But here's the thing. I didn't call her immediately. I planned to confront her when I get home. When I got home that evening, the house was quiet. I stepped into the bedroom and found Susan on the bed, fast asleep, with Chase beside her, his chest rising and falling in the steady rhythm of sleep. For a moment, I just stood there, watching them. If I hadn't seen what I saw on the security cameras earlier, I would have believed that this was the picture of a perfect family. But now, everything felt like a carefully crafted lie. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay calm. Waking Susan up now wouldn't do any good. That's when my eyes landed on her phone, sitting right there on the nightstand, screen down. I knew that I could get more secrets from her phone if she was having some sort of affair outside. I picked up the phone and pressed the side button. There was no passcode. I opened her messages, combing through the chats she had today. There were some with people I know, friends and family. And then I saw a female name I can't recall knowing. I tapped the chat, and my entire world tilted. Just by going through message after message, it was clear this wasn't a woman. Susan was updating this man about Chase. She even sent him pictures. From the messages, he was the one I saw in the camera. Her last message to him was thank you for coming around. As I kept reading, every message confirming what I feared. She had been lying to me. She apparently told the man that Chase was his son. She knew all along that I wasn't the father, but yet she still let me believe otherwise for months. I wanted to wake her up and demand answers. But instead, I just went to sit in the living room in silence, reflecting on how everything was nothing but a lie. I had read every message, seen every photo she sent to him. There was no room for doubt. I had all the proof that shows that something was going on right under my nose. I heard movement from the bedroom. A few seconds later, Susan stepped out, rubbing her eyes, looking half asleep. When she saw me sitting there, she smiled. "Hey, babe," she said, stretching. "You're back." I didn't return the smile. I kept my voice steady, with a blank expression. "Who was the man that came to visit you today?" Her face changed in an instant. "What are you talking about?" she asked, shaking her head. "Which man are you talking about?" I leaned back in my seat, studying her. She thought she could lie her way out of this. "Don't do that, Susan," I said quietly. "I saw him. On the cameras." After trying to figure out how much I knew, she admitted. "Okay, fine," she snapped. "A man came by. But it's not what you think. He's just a friend." "A friend?" I questioned. "A friend you send pictures of Chase to? A friend you tell about his doctor's appointments?" I held up her phone. "A friend you've been calling, baby. And my love in text messages?" Her expression shifted again. She wasn't even trying to deny it now. Instead, she latched onto something else. "Unbelievable," she hissed. "You went through my messages? That's an invasion of privacy, Ralph. Do you have any idea how messed up that is?" I stared at her, almost in disbelief. Out of everything, this was what she chose to focus on. Not the betrayal, not the fact that she had been lying to me for who knows how long, but the fact that I had caught her. "Are you serious right now?" I asked, my voice low. She folded her arms, defensive now. "Yes, I'm serious. Do you not trust me? You think it's okay to spy on your own wife?" I laughed. "Trust you? Are you actually saying that to me right now?" I shook my head. "I'm done, Susan. I don't have the energy for this." I stood up and walked toward the guest room. Before I left, I turned back. "By the way," I said, "I'm getting a paternity test for Chase, but this marriage is done." And with that, I walked out. The next morning, I woke up knowing I couldn't afford to waste time drowning in emotions. So, after getting ready, I drove straight to the office of a divorce lawyer I booked last night. Sitting in that waiting room felt surreal. Just days ago, I thought I had a happy family, and now I was planning how to end my marriage. When I finally met the lawyer, I laid everything out. The video of the man visiting my house while I was at work, the messages I found on Susan's phone, and most importantly, the fact that I wasn't even sure if Chase was mine. The lawyer listened carefully, then said, "Before we move forward, we need to establish paternity. If Chase isn't yours, that changes everything." I agreed and arranged a DNA test later that day. Getting Chase's sample was another battle on its own. Susan acted confused, pretended to be hurt by my request, and even accused me of being paranoid. But when I made it clear that I wasn't backing down, she finally caved. I went to the clinic to submit it and provide my sample. That wait between the test and the results felt like an eternity. When the results finally came in some days later, it was clear that the probability of paternity was 0%. Chase wasn't my son. I just sat there, staring at the paper, unable to process what I was looking at. I had spent months thinking I was his father, and now it's clear I had been living a lie. I drove straight back to the lawyer's office. I handed him the results and said, "Let's file for divorce." My voice was steady, but inside I felt shattered. When I filed for divorce, I thought it would be simple. I had proof of the affair. I had a DNA test proving Chase wasn't mine. I had every reason to believe the court would see the truth and do what was fair. But I quickly learned that fair doesn't always apply in a courtroom in some states. Susan, the same woman who betrayed me, didn't just accept the divorce and move on. No, she wanted half of everything I had, half of the house, half of my savings, half of everything I worked for, even though she was the one who stepped out of our marriage. The audacity of it was almost laughable. Almost. But when you're sitting in court, listening to your ex-wife's lawyer paint you as the villain, it stops being funny real quick. Her lawyer went all in, twisting the story to make Susan look like the victim. According to them, she was a struggling stay-at-home mom, emotionally neglected by a husband who was too focused on work. They claimed she had no choice but to seek comfort elsewhere. They said she was fragile, heartbroken, and financially vulnerable. Meanwhile, I was being portrayed as some cold, distant man who abandoned his family. None of it was true, but the way they spun the story, you'd think I was the one who betrayed her. And the worst part? The court actually entertained it. Even after the DNA test confirmed I wasn't Chase's father, even with the messages proving she was updating another man about Chase's life as if they were a family, the judge still decided Susan deserved a payout. She walked away with a significant portion of my assets, money she didn't earn, property she had no right to. That ruling should have broken me, but it didn't. Because at the end of the day, no amount of money could change the truth. Susan was out of my life for good, I thought. To me, she may have walked away with some of my money, but I walked away with my freedom. But I would soon learn that this wasn't the end of Susan's manipulation and greed. 2 years had passed since the divorce, and I had finally started putting my life back together. It wasn't easy at first. The betrayal, the lies, the court battle, it all left me drained. But that's not the case with my ex-wife. She had burned through her settlement like it was nothing. I had heard through mutual acquaintances that she had no real job, no steady income, and no savings left. She had lived recklessly, spending money as if it would never run out. And now, reality had caught up with her. One afternoon, I was in my office, wrapping up some paperwork when my secretary buzzed in. Her voice had that cautious tone, the kind that told me something was off. "Sir, there's a woman here asking to see you. She says it's urgent." I had a bad feeling immediately. "What's her name?" I asked. "She says her name is Susan." For a second, I just sat there. I hadn't spoken to her in years, and I had no desire to change that. I sighed. "Tell her I'm busy." But Susan wasn't the type to take no for an answer. Moments later, my office door swung open, and there she was. "Ralph, please," she started, stepping closer. "I just need a little help. Just something to get back on my feet." I leaned back in my chair, folded my arms. "Help?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "You mean money?" She nodded quickly. "Not much. Just a small loan. I'll pay you back, I swear. Things have just been really tough, and—" I cut her off. "Susan, we're not married anymore. Your problems aren't my problems." Her expression hardened. "Come on, Ralph, after everything." I laughed. "After everything? You mean after you lied to me, cheated on me, tried to take half of everything I worked for, and made me fight to get out of paying for a child that wasn't even mine? That everything?" Her face twisted in frustration, but she kept pushing. "I was wrong, okay? I know that now. But you're doing well, and I'm struggling. Please." I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. Leave. For a moment, I thought she might break down, might plead some more. Instead, her face went cold, and she muttered, "You'll hear from me." Then she stormed out. At first, I thought that was just her usual dramatics. But a few weeks later, I got served. Susan had filed a lawsuit against me, claiming that because I had signed Chase's birth certificate, I was still legally responsible for child support. I couldn't believe it. After everything, she was still trying to squeeze more out of me. But this time, I wasn't walking into court blind. I had a solid lawyer, and I was prepared. The hearing took place in a different courtroom with a different judge, one who actually took the time to listen to both sides. Susan performed, trying to play the struggling mother who had been abandoned by a heartless man. But as the questions kept coming, her story started to crumble. "Miss Susan," the judge said, flipping through documents, "you previously agreed that Mr. Ralph was not the biological father. Are you now claiming otherwise?" Susan hesitated. "Well, legally he still." "Answer the question," the judge pressed. She shifted uncomfortably. "No, he's not." The judge nodded and looked at me. "Mr. Ralph, do you wish to continue supporting this child?" I didn't even hesitate. "No, Your Honor." With a sigh, the judge leaned back in his chair. "Miss Susan, your argument has no legal standing. Mr. Ralph is not the biological father, and he is not obligated to provide financial support. Furthermore, as he has incurred legal fees due to this unnecessary litigation, you will be required to reimburse him for those costs." Susan's face drained of color. "What?" she snapped. "That's not fair." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Not fair? You attempted to misuse the legal system to extort money from a man you deceived. This court does not reward manipulation." I could see it in her eyes, the moment she realized she had lost. But instead of accepting defeat, she snapped. In an instant, she lunged at me, screaming, "You bastard." Court security was on her in seconds, restraining her as she thrashed and cursed. The judge pounded his gavel, telling her that her behavior is completely unacceptable, and she's been held in contempt of court. She was sentenced to 6 months in county jail. Susan's eyes widened. "No, you can't do this." But the guards were already escorting her out as she screamed and fought against them. As I watched her being dragged away, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. She had tried everything to destroy me, but in the end, she had only destroyed herself. Looking back, I walked away with lessons that changed my life. First, never ignore the signs. I wanted so badly to believe that Susan would never cheat on me that I overlooked things that didn't add up. If you ever feel like something isn't right, trust yourself. Second, love should never make you blind to reality. I thought marriage meant unconditional trust, that if I gave her my heart, she would protect it. But trust isn't a gift. It's something that has to be earned and maintained. I ignored logic because I was in love, and that made it easier for Susan to deceive me. Love is important, but it should never replace common sense. Third, protect yourself emotionally and legally. I was lucky that I took action when I did. If I had waited longer, if I had let guilt or fear stop me from getting that DNA test, I could have been trapped paying child support for a kid that wasn't mine. A lot of men get manipulated into financial and emotional ruin because they don't take the right steps. Always know your rights. Get proof before making big decisions. No matter how much you love someone, don't let emotions make you reckless. And finally, you can heal, but only if you choose to move forward. I won't lie, what Susan did to me cut deep. I was angry, I was hurt, and for a long time, I kept replaying everything in my head, wondering what I did wrong. But the truth is, I didn't fail, she did. And I had a choice: spend my life drowning in bitterness or focus on my future. I chose me, and now I'm in a better place. So, to anyone listening, I leave you with this. Sometimes you think you found the one, only to realize you deserve better. And that's okay. Pain is temporary, but what you learn from it can shape the rest of your life. Now, I want to hear from you. If you found out your child wasn't yours, how would you react? Could you still play the role of a father, or would the betrayal be too much? Let me know in the comments. I'll be reading them.